Now, and joining us on the phone is former Pennsylvania Governor Mark Schweiker. As Lieutenant Governor on 9/11, he led the state's emergency response to the crash of United Flight 93 in Shanksville, where 40 passengers and crew members lost their lives. He continues to work on Homeland Security, sharing his crisis response and counter-terrorism expertise with the Homeland Security program at Rider University in New Jersey. And we welcome you, Governor, to our program this morning. Thank you for coming on this important day.
Good morning, Ken.
You bet. Good to have you on, sir. In the aftermath of 9/11, what was it like? In fact, let's start a little earlier, bringing you back to 9/11. You were lieutenant governor on that day. Where were you when you first heard what happened, and what went through your mind in a leadership capacity at that point?
Sure. So I was traveling east on the turnpike, and actually it was much, the same kind of conditions we see today. It's a beautiful Thursday morning, sunshine starting to show, and on that Tuesday, that was a Tuesday, if everyone remembers, and our lives changed because 4 planes were hijacked, full of fuel and hate for the American way of life, so to speak, and by the end of the day, we saw carnage and violence in the World Trade Center towers fall, and then the crash at the Pentagon, and then of course the final incident and the horrific crash in Shanksville that you've already mentioned. So I was traveling east, and in my capacity as the top executive in emergency response, I was instantly informed of the first plane when it hit the tower. And then when the second hit, that's when the national defense posture was activated. And so I was expected to return to the Capitol, and I got back to the Capitol quickly for an important meeting to begin assessment and begin the deployment. So kind of a similar kind of day, but as your prior commentator mentioned and shared, and so many of your listeners who are probably above the age of 30 who remember this to some extent, everyone's life changed. So, and off we went, and by the end of the day, we had plenty of equipment and assets on the ground in Shanksville where United Flight 93 had crashed.
Yeah, and I know that the emergency response units from Philadelphia came up into New York City. There were dozens and dozens of fire trucks and ambulances that came up through New Jersey and into Lower Manhattan. I covered the event as an anchor and reporter that time, and it was amazing to see the response from units from Boston, from Hartford. They all came. If you were within a 300-400 mile radius, you sent your emergency response units to help relieve the FDNY. And so many FDNY pieces of equipment were crushed and burned on that horrible day. Sir, now, as we fast forward a little bit regarding 9/11, of course, you've made it a personal mission to keep the memory of 9/11 alive for young people. So talk about why it is so important for you to reach students who weren't even born when those attacks happened.
Well, first it is the bloodiest day on American soil in history of the country, and so any American, young or old, one would hope would be motivated to understand what caused it, how we can prevent such reactions, if for no other reason to pay attention to KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is who himself has acknowledged that he was the engineer of 9/11 and commandeering the four planes. I mean, everyone talks about Osama bin Laden. Yes, he had similar hate for the United States of America and our way of life, helped fund the operation, but KSM is still incarcerated, has acknowledged that he was the top engineer. And so Americans ought to keep in mind that he's still very much alive. And I think in the least, we owe it to the families with whom I've gotten pretty close, who were aboard United Flight 93, to say justice should be served. And finally, let's remember the cry that most Americans shared across the country, which
Let's
is
roll.
this: well, we should Yeah, well, that was Todd Beamer, but let's not forget what happened on that fateful day.
Yeah. Yeah, let's. In fact, we should talk about this. Shanksville, it's a little town. It's not that far from Pittsburgh, and I think a lot of people in the New York area are thinking, where is Shanksville? It's drivable from New York, and that little town, I'm sure, was inundated and overwhelmed when this awful crash happened. These people are town folks, smaller town. To have an impact and have what happened was, of course, devastating for the people there. And that plane was literally vaporized on impact into the ground. But we talk about never forget. Of course, the people on that plane though did something so very heroic. Todd Beamer, who was the person who led the cry, we know this. I think a lot of people don't realize we had airphones on board jets back on 9/11/01, something they don't have anymore. But people could actually use their credit card, just for the younger people watching. They could swipe a credit card and the phone was in the back of the seat in front of you, where TV monitors tend to be now. That was a phone. And you could call. And a lot of people were on that plane when the hijacking happened, and they realized what was going to happen to them. And they picked up that phone and they called their loved ones on the ground. And Todd Beamer could be heard in the background saying, "Let's roll." And they literally made a
That's
decision
right.
to lose their lives to save what could have been that plane could have been used as a missile to hit the White House or the Capitol building, correct?
Well, yes, and the theory, and really affirmed by one of the hijackers, was that they were intent on Flight 93 making its way to the nation's capital and hitting the Capitol building. But to your very point, I mean, and I always find it ironic that her nickname was Honor. But Liz
Yes.
Wainio told her mother, said, "It hurts me. This is 25 minutes after leaving Newark International Airport that morning." And by the way, as we talk, Ken, at this particular time, they were seated on the runway. They
Yes.
were taxiing on the runway in Newark before they went airborne around 8:42. But think about this relative to honor, integrity, motivation, fight aboard that plane. That, yes, to your very point, she was talking with her mother and said, relative to, I think, their sense of faithfulness, that this effort to counter the 4 terrorists that were in the cockpit area was not going to go well. She said, "It hurts me that it's going to be so much harder for you all than it is for me. I have to go. They're breaking into the cockpit. I love you." As you drive along, friends, or those who may be at home looking at this broadcast, it is someone who is about to meet their maker, in all likelihood, in the airspace above Western Pennsylvania, saying, "It's going to be harder for you than me. We're going to take on the terrorists." In my mind, it is the height of honor. In that regard, they were truly the first quasi-military force to confront the terrorists. And so we know what happened, and it crashed in Shanksville, to your point. And I'll share this with you, Ken, having been to the Shanksville Stony Creek School, which is, a small, typical rural structure, 400 students, all the way from kindergarten through senior year. Not a big building. They were near the crash site. It has forever affected that town, and certainly those young students, having been in their company. But their form of patriotism is striking to this day, and certainly in the weeks after 9/11/2001. And they realized that they were close to this conflagration that took the lives of 44 people, and they've never forgotten it. But they don't rest on laurels. I think all of them are of the mind that Americans need to be reminded, especially on this particular day, that we've got to be on guard, because there are societies and people and organizations that have nothing but disdain for the fact that you and I, in a free society, can talk right now and condemn someone like KSM. So that's the kind of area that we're talking about, and the kind of citizens that we recognize in our conversation.
And just so people know, it was right after 9/11 that you were sworn in as governor of Pennsylvania. You were lieutenant governor on 9/11. And so your role, as big as it was as lieutenant governor, then had to be stepped up to the next level where you were the prime executive of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And before I let you go, Your Honor, because we're almost out of time here, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your thoughts on the assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday. Where do you think our country is headed right now?
Well, I've got two reactions, Ken. The first being that, this option, this resorting to, violent reaction, and someone doesn't like what someone is saying and they pick up a rifle and really finish off a earnest American who was in Utah to talk and share his point of view, and his life has ended. And so our hearts and prayers and condolences go to the family. And a second observation: let's get to the bottom of it. Let's complete this investigation, find the shooter, and he should face justice promptly.
Your Honor, thank you so much. Former Pennsylvania Governor Mark Schweiker, God bless you for what you did, for leading your state and helping to lead the nation through that horrible crisis 24 years ago. It was an honor having you on today. And thank you for sharing your experiences from 9/11.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, sir.